what's happening? All that cheap money is flowing into assets, the stock market, private equity, real estate. The rich are getting richer. Asset bubble just continues because the Fed is juicing everyone up. It's like they're getting their sugar high. Drinking 25 cans of Monster is gonna get you a little juiced up, and that's what the Fed is doing. So I think it's going to continue, and I think that gold, precious metals are definitely going to head a lot higher. A rising tide lifts all boats. So as an asset class, they will go up, but they'll also go up as people get more and more nervous and think, is this rally really sustainable, or is this just all artificial?
Welcome to this RTD interview. Today, I'm excited to have first-time guest, Mr. Edward Karr. He's the president, CEO, and director of U.S. Gold Corp. And today, he's joining us to share his thoughts on the global economy, financial sector, as well as the importance of precious metals. And so, Mr. Karr, welcome to RTD.
Thanks, Mike. Great to be here.
Well, thank you for taking time to sit down with me. Definitely excited to have you on the show and get your thoughts on a variety of subject matter, because ultimately, everything, I believe, boils down to the importance of knowing the difference between paper money and sound money and the importance of gold. And so I'm excited to get thoughts on what you have going on project-wise with your company. But before we dive into that, for those that may not know who Edward Karr is, can you give us a little bit of your background and how you've arrived at this point in your career?
Sure, Mike, be happy to. So I'm the current president, CEO, and founder of U.S. Gold Corp. I've been in the capital markets on the financial side for 25 years. Originally started on Wall Street as a broker for a major financial wirehouse. I'm based over in Geneva, Switzerland. I've lived there for now going on well over 20 years and have been very, very active in the natural resource industry. I've raised a lot of money for the sector, been on multiple different boards, both NASDAQ and Toronto Stock Exchange listed companies throughout my career.
Sounds good. Well, I appreciate you for sharing that with us. And so I'm curious to get your thoughts on a variety of subject matter. So there's a lot of things happening right now around the world. And so definitely want to get your opinions on that and where you think it's heading. And so very first thing I'm curious to know, with all the things going on, what are some things that probably concerns you a little bit more than, say, anything else?
Well, look, right now, you look at the headlines every day, we got this coronavirus coming out of China, potential world-class epidemic. So I think that's quite concerning when you see a country lock down cities greater than London or New York City and just lock down the population. This is a big thing. It just shows how fragile our world is, how fragile the global economies, the global monetary systems are. And on this, Mike, we're seeing a real flight to quality. People get nervous. Treasury bonds are bid pretty well. Gold is getting a nice bid throughout this. So whether it's a virus coming out of a animal market in Wuhan, China, or it's political tensions in the Middle East, geopolitical tensions in the United States of America, it's a pretty challenging time, and one that is fraught with a lot of anxiety, I think, and fear that we live in these days.
Right. And so I want to definitely dive a little deeper into that. And so give or take, this virus situation is definitely mainstream news. And so I anticipate this possibly being some type of Black Swan event or some type of event that can trickle out into the mainstream economy, causing a slowdown. And so if we are in the U.S. having such a great expansion, could this possibility of this virus, if it hopefully, God willing, doesn't touch mainland seriously, when it comes to just the economy itself, how fragile could this really hinder the narrative of a recovery, expansion, everything is great? And, could this be something that could trickle into something that could be devastating with the global economy?
Yeah, I think it really does have the potential. And when you look at it, a lot of the U.S. manufacturing base over the last 30 years has been hollowed out. They've exported that to China. So the Wuhan area has a lot of manufacturing, whether it's Apple, having their iPhone supply chains, or Dell computer, whatever it is, a lot of televisions produced, electronics, everything. So I think that if this, becomes a much bigger issue in this Black Swan Sigma 20 event, it could really hit corporate earnings. And our global expansion has been weak at best. The only reason GDP is expanding around 2% in the United States, which the Europeans would love because they're flatlined, has really been central bank quantitative easing, funny money printing, a lot of stimulus that's going still into the financial sector. Here we are 12 years after the 2008 financial crisis, and the Fed is just putting the pedal to the metal, continuing to print, continuing to spend. A country like the United States that continues to run trillion-dollar budget and trade deficits, it's just not sustainable, in my opinion, in the long term. So if it is a virus that kind of sets off a big cascading bear market where people start to really understand how fragile the world we're living in, that could be it. It could be any number of different things that ultimately, I think, show people how fragile of a world we're in.
Right. And so I would agree. And so you hinted on quantitative easing. And so apparently a couple of months ago, Jerome Powell mentioned that it's not QE. So I don't want to, misquote our chairman here, but it sounds like, we're in an emergency crisis type of situation when it comes to the financial markets and whatnot. And so in your opinion, definitely ultimately it's going to result in higher prices and things that are very extremely undervalued, such as gold. And we're going to definitely get there. But if this continuation of easing occurs, do you see the possibility of a much higher stock market and all the overinflated asset prices already in a variety of sectors to where it continues to probably suppress the price of metals to the point where there's even a further divergence of actual nominal discovery of price?
Yeah, absolutely. And, when Jerome Powell says it's not QE, I kind of think if it looks like a duck and it sounds like a duck, it's a duck. And, it is quacking right now. Quack, quack, quack. All the money being printed, funny money, whether the Fed is, buying mortgage-backed securities or treasuries or pumping money directly into the repo market. They are just printing money at the end of the day. And they're ultimately financing the trade budget deficits and trade deficits that the United States has. So what's happening? All that cheap money is flowing into assets, the stock market, private equity, real estate. The rich are getting richer. Asset bubble just continues because the Fed is juicing everyone up. It's like they're getting their sugar high. Drinking 25 cans of Monster is gonna get you a little juiced up, and that's what the Fed is doing. So I think it's going to continue, and I think that gold, precious metals are definitely going to head a lot higher. A rising tide lifts all boats. So as an asset class, they will go up, but they'll also go up as people get more and more nervous and think, is this rally really sustainable, or is this just all artificial?
Interesting. Now, as the tide rises and the prices eventually reach what they should be, or whatever that is, because I'm curious to get your thoughts on, because things seem to be so suppressed, things of true value, such as gold and silver, they've been suppressed for so long. And so when this gives, when everything blows, in your personal opinion, where do you think the prices of gold or the gold and silver ratio, where do you say that, what do you think that might be?
Well, the only thing I can say is it'll be a lot higher. And I don't want to go out and make any outlandish predictions or forecasts, but it will be significantly higher. Mm-hmm. And when people start to actually understand and realize, how is money created, Mike? And you probably know, to make $1, you have to have $1 of debt. So money in a fractional reserve banking system is literally created out of debt. The more debt we have, the more money we have. But gold has no liability. There's no counterpart of the liability of gold. When you have an ounce of gold in your hand, that is real value, real tangible value. And ultimately, whether it's a US $100 bill or euro or British pound or a Japanese yen, RMB, whatever it is, they're all paper funny money. They only work as long as we believe in them. And if we ever lose faith that, hey, I don't think the US dollar is really worth it anymore, it could go the way of the Venezuelan bolivar. Zero overnight. It really could. And then gold would go up infinitely, ad infinitum. I mean, it would go up tremendously because it's supply and demand. There's not a lot of physical gold out there. If there was a big rush into it, you would see prices skyrocket, go a lot higher. And I think that people just need to start accumulating, dollar cost averaging in. At the end of the day, for me too, it's not really about the price of gold or silver. It's about how many physical ounces do I actually have, and it's a safety policy, like an insurance policy that ultimately, and I really hope, I have a young daughter. I don't want the global financial system to blow up. I'm not one of these crazy preppers that says, go out and buy gold and beans and get in your bunker with your guns. No, but having 5 to 10% of your overall net worth in gold that for, thousands and thousands of years has ensured financial value, I think that that's very, very prudent, and all people should have that.
All right, I do agree. And so before we dive into your company and get into the nitty gritty of the mining and how it's all interconnected and some projects you have going on, definitely excited to hear about that. You mentioned gold. And so you mentioned, you don't concern yourself with the price, but how many ounces you have. And so when it comes to the physical weight, I always talk about on this channel how I keep a close eye onto nations that are getting tonnage. And so, smaller individuals can get ounces of whatever, but nations right now, central banks are getting tonnage. And so you being in that sector, so I'm assuming you're seeing the volume and where it's going. In your opinion, what and why is China and other nations repatriating, and why are they accumulating so much gold? What do they perhaps know that we may not know, in your opinion?
Well, I think that there's this new global balance going on, and kind of West versus East. China's a rising power. They would love to have a brand new world global financial system that does not have the US dollar as the global reserve currency. If they could replace the dollar with the RMB, that would give them a tremendous amount of power around the world. And so, the Chinese, they hoover up all the domestic mining supply in the country. They actually buy a lot more through Singapore and Hong Kong, import it into the country. And no one really knows how many metric tons of gold China has. Do they have 1,500, or do they have 8 or 10,000? A lot of people think that one day China is going to come out and say, look, the RMB, we have 30 to 40% hard backing in physical gold, and ultimately it will become a new reserve currency. And it's not just China, Mike. The Russians are buying a lot of gold. Certainly in the Middle East, they're buying a lot of gold, the Indians, et cetera. The Iranians, because they're completely locked out of the US dollar system with the sanctions and SWIFT. So they transact in gold. And a lot of people around the world don't like this US dominance that has really been in place since World War II and Bretton Woods, the IMF, and the World Bank, with the US dollar leading. So they see gold as kind of an alternative in the future towards the US dollar.
Now, before we get into the last question, I promise I have so many questions I can ask, but I would definitely want to get into what's the operations you have going on. So do you foresee a time in this country, United States of America, where gold becomes pivotal or introduced back into the monetary system to provide some stability in our financial realms or whatnot? Can you see, Fort Knox, being opened and we getting a chance to discover what's in there for truly? Or what are your thoughts on gold in people's hands and in our system now?
Yeah, I really could. I think if you had a big catalytic event, and just think, in Europe, we have Deutsche Bank, one of the biggest banks in Europe, which is literally on the verge of insolvency. It's had issues for a long time. Imagine in the United States if JP Morgan or Goldman Sachs went bankrupt, and all of a sudden there was a run on the bank, a major financial institution, Citibank, Chase, Wells Fargo, Bank of America, whichever one it was. I think there would be so much shock from the average Americans, and then you'd probably get some people in Congress, whether it might even be someone like Rand Paul, that would come out and say, hey, we should really go back to a gold standard. Mm-hmm. And at that point, that might actually get some political willpower, for the Congress to go forward and push some legislation through to go back towards a gold standard. So I could definitely see it happening at some point in the future.
Interesting. Now, the good thing, we have U.S. Gold Corp around to help provide gold and opportunities for people. So one thing I like to do on this channel is to bring new guests on that present possible opportunities for people to invest and just better understand what's going on, to provide education. So U.S. Gold Corp, give us a little bit of rundown as to the origins of it, how it got started, and size of the team, and just what you guys have currently on the surface right now.
Sure, be happy to. So U.S. Gold Corp, we're a publicly traded company on the NASDAQ, symbols USAU, so U.S. Gold, AU being the symbol for gold. We've got three great projects currently right now, Mike, in the company. Our flagship project is called Copper King, and that's located just outside of Cheyenne, Wyoming, about 20 miles outside of Cheyenne. And Copper King is a really nice deposit. We got about 1.8 million gold equivalent ounces. It's an at-surface deposit on some state of Wyoming ground. So we only deal with the regulators in Cheyenne for permitting and pushing this project forward. We are not a mine yet. We're not mining gold. We have what's known as a preliminary economic assessment, a PEA, showing the project's very robust. They did that at 1275 gold, 280 copper, because it's a gold copper deposit. And it shows a net present value on that of $178 million with an annualized internal rate of return about 33%. So our market cap today is only about $20 million. It's very, very small. So you see the upside just based on Copper King. And then we have two world-class exploration projects in Nevada. And north central Nevada is elephant country. This is where most of the gold in the United States is actually mined. You got the two big majors, Barrick and Newmont Mining, that have recently formed a joint venture there. Our project Keystone is only about 10 miles south of Barrick Gold's Cortez Hills complex. It's an amazing exploration project, great piece of real estate, about 12,000 square acres, 20 square miles. And we believe we are on the verge of major discovery success. So we're an exploration company. We're trying to prove up a world-class deposit. Our second exploration project is called Maggie Creek. We have an option on that. That's located on the Carlin Trend. Again, another world-famous mining trend. And again, we're advancing that towards discovery success.
Interesting. Now, for those that are beginners, such as myself, in understanding the exploration side of things, someone might be watching and saying, what's the difference between someone that's actually physically digging and someone that's exploring? Give us some of the basics of it from like the kindergarten level, in a sense.
Sure. So in the mining industry, you really have three different levels of companies. You got your majors, your big major production companies, Barrick Gold, I mentioned, Newmont Mining, the biggest in Nevada. So they mine millions of ounces a year. They're multi-billion-dollar companies, big operations, tens of thousands of employees. Then you've got your mid-tiers. Your mid-tiers might be $1 billion market cap, some smaller level mines that are in production, producing maybe 100,000 ounces of gold a year. And then you have your exploration companies. So we are literally like the bottom of the industry on the pyramid, and definitely the most speculative sector of the market, but can also give you the biggest upside returns. I'd say the best analogy, Mike, think about like the junior biotechnology companies that are trying to come up with a new discovery drug for cancer. And ultimately, if they do, what's going to happen? The big pharmaceutical companies will buy them. You'll have Merck, Eli Lilly, Procter & Gamble, Novartis, whatever, come in and buy that company. That's exactly our business model on the junior exploration side. We're trying to prove up a discovery on our projects. And if we do, being right next door to Barrick Gold, we believe they'd be very interested. They'd come in and potentially buy the company or buy the project.
Interesting. So for the projects you named, so where are some of them showing very promising results thus far?
Yeah, absolutely. So our Copper King project, we know we have the defined resource there. So that's very, very prospective and very viable. We're also at this point trying to expand it. So we know it's good size, but we're trying to make it even bigger. And with the gold price going up, and soon I believe the price of copper going up, this project is just getting more and more valuable for our shareholders every day. It's like having Fort Knox right out in the Wyoming countryside. Then in Nevada, we don't yet have a deposit. We don't yet have a resource. We're trying to find it. We need to find where X marks the spot on the treasure map. Where is that big deposit? But all the signs are telling us a world-class discovery is potentially there. It is amazing. We look at the host rocks. They're very prospective, great alteration, great brecciation, signs of a massive world-class epithermal gold system. And we are trying to stick a drill hole into it. And if we do, it's going to create tremendous shareholder value. These companies can be real lottery tickets if you can deliver the results, but we've got to deliver those exploration results. So that's what we're really trying to do here in 2020.
Interesting. So, just out of curiosity, for those that are new to your company and whatnot, what do you see 5 or so years, give or take 10 years down the line, as far as what you currently have now? Any future things you might be looking at as well to even add more value to what you're offering now?
Of course. On what we have now, I would see in the next 5 years, our Copper King project is advanced towards production. So we will actually build a facility. We will get the permits from the state of Wyoming to put that into production. And we will start producing, mining gold and copper concentrate out of that project. So that's 5 years down the road there. 5 years down the road in Nevada at our Keystone and Maggie Creek projects, I would really hope even sooner than 5 years, we come with some world-class discoveries. We can prove up to the industry what we believe is there. We drill into a major world-class gold deposit, and then I would imagine some major mining companies come knock on our door and want to buy that project from us.
All right, interesting. So as we draw towards the end of our discussion, I'm assuming that since you're the founder, the CEO, you have some skin in the game as well. So that's more of an incentive as well for you to really keep things moving forward, correct?
Yeah, it certainly is. I'm one of the largest shareholders in the company. I've got a lot of my own personal after-tax hard-earned dollars in the company. I participate in every private placement. I buy stock out of the market. Anyone can go look at my SEC filings and see how big my position is and how much money I put into this. So I really believe in the upside.
Interesting. Okay. So as we draw and bring things to an end, I'm curious to find out, is there anything else that I might have missed question-wise that would be good for potential investors to consider or look at, or anything like that you might want to include?
Look, we got a great team, great board of directors. Last year I brought on as a director Ryan Zinke. He's the former Secretary of the Interior under the Trump administration, so cabinet level secretary. He was the former commander of SEAL Team 6, so he's been fantastic. We brought on another director, Douglas Newby, who's the former CFO of Polymet Mining. So very, very experienced team. We're in a great place. Great company, NASDAQ listed, U.S. properties, no geopolitical risk. It's not like we're trying to find gold in Afghanistan. This is in the United States, with a great team. So I think this market's really going to take off. We're probably in the first inning of a 9-inning ball game as far as the gold price and this natural resource sector. And, just continue to watch the company. Your listeners can go on our website. That's www.usgoldcorp.gold. They can sign up for the news releases, continue to keep their eyes on the company. And we're doing everything we can to try and move this company towards exploration success for everyone out there.
Sounds good. Well, Edward Karr, it's been great having you join me on RTD. Looking forward to continue to follow the development of the progress of the company and operations you guys have going on. And so definitely love to have you back on in the future and see where you guys are at and see if there's anything new worthy of talking about. So once again, thank you for joining me on RTD.
Thanks so much for the interest, and we'd love to come back with good success in the future.
Sounds good. Appreciate it.